Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzhak Ruvain speaking to you from south of Jerusalem here in the Holy Land of Israel. Today is the 12th day of the month of Tammuz, 5785, July 8th, 2025. This coming Shabbat, we are reading Parashat Balak, which begins in the book of Numbers, chapter 22, verse 2, concludes chapter 25, verse 9, and the day after Shabbat, Sunday, is the 17th of Tammuz, Shva Esrei B'Tammuz, and that, of course, is a fast day in the beginning of the 3 weeks known as Bein HaMetzarim in Hebrew, between the straits, borrowing from a phrase used in the book of Lamentations, which mourns the destruction of both the first and second holy temple, which they both, of course, were destroyed on the 9th of Av, which concludes the 3 weeks. The 17th of Tammuz has multiple significance. First of all, it was the day that Moshe came down from Mount Sinai. If you recall, he went up on the 6th of Sivan. That's when we celebrate the receiving of Torah on Shavuot. And 40 days later was the 17th of Tammuz. That's when he came down, saw Israel dancing around the golden calf, and in response shattered the luchot, the 2 tablets of the law. And it also was the day that the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem, which led to the destruction of the second holy temple and the destruction of Jerusalem, the exile of Jews from Jerusalem, and ultimately the loss of any signs of sovereignty, Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel for 2,000 years. Before we continue, I want to extend my prayers for the people whose lives were taken in that horrible tragedy in Texas. Prayer for the people who survived. Prayer that for the families to heal. Horrible natural catastrophe which took the lives, from what I understand, of over 100 people, many of them young children. Just completely devastating, and it's something that we here in Israel are following. You may think we have our own troubles, and we do, but our hearts and our prayers are with America, with the Texans, with those who have suffered from this horrible tragedy. And I don't know what else to say about it. So many things that we just don't understand why, and it's very difficult. Very difficult. Here in Israel, we suffered a very devastating blow yesterday evening. 5 soldiers were killed in an ambush that took place in Gaza, and every time we lose a soldier, it's taken very hard here in Israel. And these 5 soldiers happen to be from the Netzach Yehuda division, which is an ultra-Orthodox army unit, which has been in existence for, I think, about 26 years. And it's sort of the flagship ultra-Orthodox unit in the army. And of course, much has been done to try to encourage more Haredim, is what the word we refer to and use in Israel to refer to ultra-Orthodox, to encourage more Haredim to join into the army, and more are all the time. But we're talking about, again, youth, people 19 years old, 20 years old. It's a tough world we live in. It's a tough world. If it's not natural disaster, then it's man-made disaster. It's easy always to, point a finger and cast blame, but that's not always the most productive response. I think the most productive response is to reach out to others, to remind ourselves to do even better than we have been in terms of being good to others, caring about others, and also to take stock of ourselves and who we are and what we're doing in life. And again, simply to reach out to others in prayer and in deed. So let's us all pray for better news, as we say in Hebrew, and besorot tovot. We should hear good news and have positive occasions in order for us to meet and celebrate together. And may God comfort those who have suffered loss. This Sunday, as I said, is the fast of the 17th day of Tammuz. I mentioned a moment ago what that fast commemorates, and it's the beginning of the 3 weeks. Again, as I said in Hebrew, referred to as the Bein HaMetzarim, between the straits, a line taken from Lamentations. And it's a difficult period in Israel every year, and it's been happening now for nearly 2,000 years. And it's something we've discussed every year on Temple Talk for as long as Temple Talk has been on the air, to use that expression. And it's something that the Temple Institute, of course, takes very seriously because what's it all about? You know, the temple was destroyed, the second temple was destroyed in the year 70. And that tragedy, which was bigger than we can imagine, even because it was the temple was the center of Jewish life. It was a center of spiritual life, a center of the nation of Israel, of the physical, of the secular nation of Israel as well. And of course, having been refurbished by King Herod, it was considered to be the most beautiful building in the world. And of course, people came from all over the world in order to worship at the Holy Temple. I'll just stress once again that it was not a Jewish temple, but it's the house of God and a house of prayer for all nations. Everybody is invited, everybody is welcome to come to the Holy Temple and to be with Hashem in the Holy Temple. And so, but along with the mourning that came with the destruction was the burning desire to rebuild the Holy Temple as soon as possible. And the people of those early generations did not imagine that 2,000 years later we'd still be mourning the temple and not having rebuilt the temple, because they had plans and they had working plans. And I'm just talking about architectural plans. I'm talking about revolution and rebellion. And of course, we know about the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which was brutally crushed, which really, to a great extent, ended any realistic hopes of returning to a sovereign nation, rebuilding the temple anytime soon. Yet, on the other hand, there still were attempts, and even there were Roman Caesars who gave a nod toward rebuilding the Holy Temple, which greatly excited the Jews at the time. But those all proved to be very fleeting. Those promises. But my point is that it took time before the nation of Israel, the Jews, who now were dispersed all throughout the world, before they simply got into a mode of mourning really without any practical, realistic hope of rebuilding. And that's when certain ideas like the temple will come down from heaven, that Mashiach, we have to wait for Mashiach, it's not up to us to rebuild the Holy Temple. Those ideas started to gain traction because the situation was desperate. How else could you express your hope? It would have been absurd to say, okay, let's plan to enter the Temple Mount and rebuild it. It just was totally impractical. So these other ideas began to gain traction and to become very popular. And with that, the period of mourning sort of became an annual ritual of feeling bad, and almost, I hate to say it, but taking pleasure in feeling bad. It was sort of a cathartic thing to just, okay, we can feel bad, we can mourn, and then we can go on living our lives. And again, for those very difficult years in the diaspora, that was about all you could do. But when Israel in modern times regained our sovereignty, and in 1967 regained sovereignty over the Temple Mount, the annual 3 weeks of mourning, simply for the sake of mourning, started to feel a little bit ridiculous and a little bit hypocritical. Because why are we mourning when we have the ability now? It may be difficult, it may not be simple, there are a lot of obstacles, but we have the ability to, at the very least, begin planning, begin discussing the reality of rebuilding the Holy Temple. And now, let's see, 67 to today, that's 58 years later? Right. 58 years later, there is still tremendous ambivalence, tremendous lack of interest, and tremendous opposition here in Israel, among the Jews of Israel. However, that has been countered by more and more and more real interest and reawakening of a real desire and a reawakening of what the temple promises, not just for Israel but for the world. A whole new relationship between Israel and the world, and a whole new relationship between the nations amongst themselves and between the nations and God. And so this consciousness is constantly growing. Of course, you know what I'm going to say next, that the Temple Institute has played a major role in making this change and guiding this change and in teaching people and opening people's eyes. And of course, as the years have gone by, many other individuals and groups and rabbis have been moved by this and are teaching and moving forward with spreading the news and spreading the consciousness and making real and practical preparations for the rebuilding of the temple. So what does it have to do with the 3 weeks? These 3 weeks really should be, at this point in our history, not a period of mourning, but a period of intensified study and preparation. Anything less than that is hypocritical. Because if you really want to rebuild the Holy Temple, and that is one of the 613 commandments, and it's also embedded in our prayers from morning till night, every day, if that interests you, and if that's your desire, then now's the time to be working toward that. At the very least, studying about the temple and not simply accepting as a fact of life forever and ever that the temple was destroyed and that's it. We're never going to have it again, because that's not what Judaism is about. It might be a very convenient way of dealing with it. Okay, it was destroyed. It's been a few thousand years. We've survived without it. We'll survive another 2,000 years without it. Okay, let's just, we don't need to get involved in that. But that is not Judaism. And if you are a practicing Jew and a serious Jew, and if you have that attitude, I think you really need to do some soul searching and think about what you're really saying. And if you're a practicing Jew and you really have no interest in rebuilding the Holy Temple, what I recommend is that you consider your ways. But if you want to not be a hypocrite, then stop praying for it. Stop adding those prayers in your morning prayer, your afternoon prayer, your evening prayer when you say grace, birkat bracha achrona after a meal, when you're at a wedding, when you're at any holiday, any occasion, every occasion, and every communal occasion in Jewish life, we mention a desire to rebuild the Holy Temple. So if that's not really top on your list of things that need to be done, either drop the prayers or get on board. So yes, unfortunately, there are still too many people who indulge in the 3 weeks, indulge in the customs of mourning that we take on in order to commemorate, commemorate and mourn the loss of the Holy Temple, the Beit HaMikdash. But it's just not enough anymore. It's just not enough. And, it's a very strong tradition, and people don't like to break with tradition. But you can continue the mourning. You can continue the customs. But those customs should be augmented with learning, with intensified study, with looking around and seeing what can be done, what you can do. Going to the Temple Mount. Again, it is halachically 100% kosher for a Jew to go up to the Temple Mount. There are many places on the Temple Mount where a Jew today can be without any problematic situation. Those places where a Jew is not allowed to be halachically, Jews won't enter. If you go up with other Jews, nobody goes into those areas. The police would not even allow you to go into those areas. Today on the Temple Mount, the ability to pray exists, and song and celebration. Someone just got engaged the other day on the Temple Mount, and there was great singing and dancing. That was not too long ago, and I was present when very clandestinely a couple was engaged on the Temple Mount, and despite the fact that it was kept very quiet, it made a big fuss, and there was all sorts of controversy here in Israel and controversy with the Arabs. This week, someone very publicly proposed and got engaged, and like I said, there was singing and dancing, and it went off without a hitch, without a glitch, and things have really changed. So be part of that. And that again is something that every Jew and every non-Jew can do, which leads us. It's another step toward rebuilding the Holy Temple. It's breaking down the barriers. And so as we go through the 3 weeks, and of course begins on a fast day, the 17th, which is this Sunday, which it's a dawn to dusk fast day, being that it's the middle of the summer. It's a very long, difficult fast because it's long hours of daylight and very, very hot. And then it concludes, of course, on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, with basically what amounts to a 25-hour fast. And then those 3 weeks are over, and we return to normal life. Many people, avoid going to concerts, listening to live music. Some people don't listen to any music during the 3 weeks. There's all different customs. People don't get their hair cut or shaved during the 3 weeks. The customs of mourning intensify as the 3 weeks go on, and during the 9 days of Av, intensifies even more. Interesting, because when someone is actually mourning the loss of a loved one, the most intense period of mourning is the first 7 days, the Shiva, and then the Shloshim, which are the first 30 days. And then throughout the rest of the year, there are customs of mourning, and then after a year, the period of mourning ends. It's the exact opposite with the 3 weeks, because in the 3 weeks the customs of mourning intensify. And the other difference is that when a person passes away, we've lost them, and until the resurrection of the dead, we are not going to see that person again, and so it's very final. However, concerning the Holy Temple, it's nothing final about it. It needs to be rebuilt, and it will be rebuilt. All our prophets have prophesied that it will be rebuilt, and it's needed to be rebuilt, and it's our responsibility again. Vasuli mikdash, shachanti betocham. Those are the words that we read in the book of Exodus, chapter 25, verse 8. They shall build me a sanctuary, and I will dwell amongst them. And of course, the first sanctuary was the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the wilderness, which the people of Israel built with their own hands. And the first temple was built by the people of Israel with the help of the workers sent by Hiram, the Lebanese king. And so it was Jews with the aid of Gentiles who built the first holy temple, again with their own hands. And the second temple, of course, was built by the Jews who returned from Babylon. And despite tremendous hardship, tremendous economic hardship, and tremendous political hardship, and even tremendous spiritual/religious hardship, because the people in those 70 years that they had been in exile had to a tremendous extent assimilated and lost their identity. So that had to be regained. But despite all those obstacles, they succeeded in rebuilding the Holy Temple. So, yes, we have tremendous challenges today and geopolitical obstacles, but we can't let that dissuade us or discourage us. And it's not up to the Moshiach, it's not up to the Messiah to build the Holy Temple. Yes, we do know, the Rambam tells us, he confirms tradition, that if the Moshiach appears and we have not yet built the Holy Temple, then he is the one who will supervise, oversee the building of the Holy Temple. He's not going to build it himself. He's going to have the people of Israel build the temple. But rebuilding the temple does not need to wait for the Messiah. It is a mitzvah like all other mitzvot, meaning it's up to us to do. That's the purpose of the commandments. There are things for us to do, and there are things that we are capable of doing, either as individuals or as a nation. God does not give us commandments that we are incapable of fulfilling. It just does not work that way. What would be the point? That would just be cruel. And the idea that it's going to come down from heaven is just, we don't rely on miracles. It's forbidden to rely on miracles. The only thing that will come down from heaven is going to be God's presence when we build the temple. That's Hashem's contribution. We build the physical temple, and Hashem fills it with His presence, with His Shekhinah. That's what's coming down from heaven. That's what's re-emerging into our reality, and that's what's going to create the change that will affect the entire world. So, as we're about to enter into these 3 weeks, I encourage everybody to stick with the plan, stick with the program, be serious. Don't allow yourself to be lulled into a sense of complacency or a sense of helplessness. it's totally up to us. And all we need to do is to be determined and to see it through. And in that vein, I want to mention that the Temple Institute, and again, we're keeping this very quiet for a number of reasons. The Temple Institute made tremendous steps forward in realizing the creation of the ashes of the red heifer. I'm not going to say too much about it, but certain things, certain steps were taken, which bring us a lot closer to that, to realizing that goal. And again, that is something that the Temple Institute is constantly involved in. And I mentioned it recently because it was only it was last week's Parashat Balak, which discusses the red heifer. I know it can be frustrating for people because we don't talk about it much, and you wonder what's going on. We have heifers here. Are they kosher? When are they going to be slaughtered? I understand your curiosity and desire to know what's going on and have a pulse on it, and I also understand your impatience in wanting it to move forward. All I can say is there are political reasons, and by political reasons I mean that if we make too much noise about it, it will create opposition within the Jewish world, unfortunately, and outside of the Jewish world, which will only hinder our progress. So it's better for us to move forward quietly, and when we are ready to make the final step toward achieving the ashes, hopefully we'll be able to publicize that and do it very openly. But again, I just want to stress that steps have been taken very, very recently, which bring us much, much closer, increasing our knowledge and our experience and our ability to create the ashes in the way that it's supposed to be done, so that they'll be kosher and not simply a good try, but we really want it. It really needs to be a success. So we've made tremendous progress, and I'll leave it at that. We don't have too much time left, but let's talk quickly about this week's Parashat Balak. As I said before, it begins in the book of Numbers, chapter 22, verse 2, concludes 22, verse 5. And let's read the first few verses in Hebrew, then in English. Vayar Balak ben Sipor et kol asher asa Yisrael le'emori. Vayagor Moav mipnei ha'am ma'od ki rav hu vayakotz Moav mipnei bnei Yisrael. Vayomer Moav el ziknei Midian ata yilachachu הקהל את כל סביבותיה, את כל סביבותינו, כי לכוך השור את ירק השדה, ובלק בן ציפור מלך למואב בעת ההיא, וישלח מלאכים אל בלעם בן באור פטורה, אשר על הנהר ארץ בני עמו, לקרוא לו לאמור, הנה עם יצא ממצרים, הנה כיסה את עין הארץ, והוא יושב ממולי, ואתה לך נא ארה לי, את העם הזה, כי עצום הוא ממני, אולי אוכל נקה בו, ואגרשנו מן הארץ, כי ידעתי את אשר תברך מבורך, ואשר תאור יואר. Balak, son of Tzipor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorite. Last week we read about how Israel conquered the Amorites. Moab became very frightened of the people because it was numerous, and Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, now the congregation, meaning Israel, will lick up our entire surroundings as an ox licks up the greenery of the field. Balak, son of Zippor, was king of Moab at that time. He sent messengers to Bilaam, son of Beor, to Petor, which is by the river of the land of the members of his people, to summon him, saying, behold, a people has come out of Egypt. Behold, it has covered the surface of the earth, and it sits opposite me. So now, please come and curse this people for me, for it is too powerful for me. Perhaps I will be able to strike it and drive it away from the land. For now I know that whoever you bless is blessed, and whoever you curse is accursed. Wow, that last line sounds very familiar. Why? Because, of course, the only one who blesses or curses is Hashem, and he told Avraham way back when, those who bless you will be blessed. And of course, those who curse you will be cursed. And we know that to be every bit as true today as ever. Those nations who have blessed Israel today, who are allies of Israel, those nations are blessed. And those nations who have decided, like Moab, like Balak, the king of Moab, to try to go up at war against Israel, or to curse Israel, or to destroy Israel, simply because they're afraid of Israel, they're intimidated by Israel. Israel had no designs on Moab. Israel had a land that it was destined to enter into, a promise from Hashem. That's all Israel wanted then. That's all Israel wants today. Israel is taking nobody's land but its own. There's no reason for anyone to fear Israel or try to destroy Israel, but here we are today, and if nations aren't trying to physically attack and destroy us, and they certainly are trying to curse us, and we can go on and on and on, have a whole other show about the attempts in the media, all the Bilaams in the world today, whether they be in the legacy media, whether they be in the internet media, in the Twitter media, or whether they be politicians or leaders of nations, who all have horrible things to say, or the UN, who all have tried to curse Israel all the time with their words, with the horrible things that they say. The curses don't stick. As long as Israel is true to its course, and Israel has been true to its course, especially these past 2 years. Israel got a very rude awakening call on October 7th, 2023, and it really shook the people of Israel, shook the house of Israel, and sobered us up and straightened us up. And we have become more determined and more true to our course, and more loyal to our destiny than we had been, because we had been drifting, unfortunately. But we're very focused now. And so all these curses and all these horrible things, all these words and names they say, apartheid and genocide and everything else, it just means nothing. Just like the curses that Bilaam was hired to utter. And yes, today a lot of this also has to do with the money, and we know who's behind distributing the money worldwide. To all the people all the would-be Bilaams, all the would-be curses of Israel, Bilaam, at least being a prophet of a very, very high stature, despite the fact that he was a heathen prophet, he was considered to be a prophet of a very, very high stature, as high as the Israel prophets, as high as Moshe. However, he wasn't a righteous person, but he understood at least that he could only utter what Hashem would put in his mouth. He was a true prophet. And despite the fact that he was hired to curse, only blessings could come out of his mouth. And those blessings are so relevant today. And of course, his final blessings, his final prophecies were directed at the end of days. He saw it as a very distant future. A star will step forth out of Yaakov, and a scepter. And he understood that to be in a very distant future. We have arrived at the very distant future, and Bilaam's prophecies are very true today. They're coming true today. Read them, learn them, study them, study the Jewish understanding and interpretations and insights into those prophecies, and that will help you to get a better understanding of all that's transpiring today. I hear the music. Again, before I leave, I just want to express my prayers for the well-being and recovery and comfort of all those in Texas who have lost so much. Thank you for being with me. Temple Talk.